Hi, Wilma. Good evening, wherever you are. I know we're from all over the world, and I think this is a subject that resonates all over the world because anybody who has a child, has loved a child, who's parenting, in the midst of parenting, grandparenting, you name it, who cares about our society at all, I think will care about this new book. I really appreciate all of you being here on a Friday. I know all of you, Wellington, Florida, it's beautiful there. I know all of you are busy. You could be anywhere, and you chose to be here today with myself and with Jonathan. And I really wanted to talk to him. Normally I don't work at this time Friday because it's usually my time with my granddaughter, Lila, but she's on spring break. So I was able to speak to Jonathan because Lila said, "You can do that, Mama G." Oh, hi, Jonathan.
Hello, Maria. This is my very first time on Instagram Live. Thanks so much.
Oh, well, thank you for coming on here. I was just saying that I normally don't do anything at this time on Friday because it's my special Mama G time. But my granddaughter is on her spring break from preschool. And I thought, well, as a grandparent, I'm super interested in this. And as a mother of 4 kids, super interested in this. And by the way, congratulations.
Thanks.
Congratulations for doing this, getting it out into the world to initiate a much needed conversation. What's the reaction been like for you, Jonathan?
The reaction has been unlike anything I've ever seen because I've done a lot of things where I have to try to persuade people of something.
Yeah.
And here I don't have to persuade anyone. Wherever I go, when a journalist interviews me, they always say, I've seen this in my own children. I have a daughter who's going through this. So parents everywhere are fed up. Parents everywhere are sick of having the same arguments with their kids because of the technology companies making these addictive technologies. So it's been really kind of weird. Like there's almost no opposition other than there's a normal debate with a few other psychologists. But out in the public, there's like no dissent, no disagreement.
What about disagreement from the media companies themselves, the social media companies? Are they like, whoa.
Well, they don't, they have their PR strategy and they say the things they say. I have cordial relations with some people at Meta and some people at Google. I don't know anybody at Snap. So far, nobody's attacked me. Nobody's said anything from those companies. If they were working against me, they would certainly go through various agencies to try to change the idea field. I don't think they'd attack me directly.
So what I was saying before you came on, Jonathan, I think this book is so important, as I said, not just for people who are sick of parenting, but for those of us with adult children. I have a Gen Z son, but also for those of us who are grandparents as well, because my granddaughter, she's 3. I have one that's also 1.5. She's trying to always get my phone already at 3, right? I'll look at my phone sometimes. She goes, "I can help you," at 3, right? But her parents are very strict about her phone time, her tablet time, any kind of media. And what I like about this is you've really brought us to we have a problem, but instead of let's just talk about the problem, you're very clear about these are solutions that can get us out of this mess. And I was talking about some of your solutions. Why don't you walk through the 4 things you think can really turn this around? And then I want to talk about the conversation I had with my kids last night.
Sure. So the basic thesis of the book is that we have overprotected our children in the real world where they need a lot of play and independence and exposure and learning. And we've underprotected them online, which is this bizarre new world full of weird people and people who want to meet children. And, we sort of, so we've got to fix both of those mistakes.
Yeah.
And what I propose is 4 norms that we can all adopt. They're hard to adopt if you're acting on your own, but they're actually easy if we do them together. So it's number 1, no smartphone before high school. Just give your kid a flip phone. Do not give them their own smartphone to have with them all the time until they're in high school. 2, no social media until 16. This is a little harder, but if most of us do it, then our kids can't say, "But Dad, I'm the only one who doesn't have Instagram." They can't say that because we'll know it's not true. Most kids won't have Instagram until they're 16. The 3rd norm is phone-free schools. This is probably the most powerful one that we can do this year. We can get this done this year. If anybody watching this, if your kids go to a school where they say, "Oh, we ban phones during class," no, that's nothing. The kids are using the phone during class. They have to lock up the phone in a phone locker or your underpouch in the morning. And the fourth norm is far more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world. Because if we're going to reduce their screen time by 80%, let's say, we have to give them back a normal childhood where they're playing with other kids, or as teenagers, hanging out with other teams. They're not just, doing this all day long. They need people. So those are the four norms. We can do them if we act together.
So my daughter was saying last night, well, if you take their phones away, what about their tablets? They're going to do the exact same thing on their tablets at school.
So yes, the tablets. Now I hear you. The tablets are not quite as bad in that they can't take them with them everywhere. So the phone is the biggest problem because it's literally with them everywhere. Now, if your kid has their own tablet at home, if you have an 8-year-old, a third or fourth grader with their own tablet, that's bad too, because once they can customize it and the various apps can customize themselves for your child. So yes, a tablet is bad too. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying keep them away from the internet. You can have a computer in the living room. They can play on that within limits. You can have a tablet that you sometimes give them to play games or to watch shows. So I'm not saying don't let your kids see screens. It's not that a screen is dangerous per se. It's that once a child has one of these touchscreen devices, internet enabled, it will take over every bit of attention that it will take over every free minute. And so you've got to stop that.
But I found with my Gen Z son, his school moved into tablets. So everybody was on a tablet. Out went the books and in went the tablet. So he may leave his phone, and I'm not singling him out just because he's Gen Z, but he may put the phone down, but he's doing everything on his iPad, or at school, everything was on his iPad.
That's right. So that's the next battle is once we get the phones locked up, we have to get all the school administrators to understand, and actually they do understand this. The kids cannot attend to the teacher or to each other if they have a device that they can text on. Because if anyone in the class is texting, everybody has to check their texts because they don't want to be the only kid who doesn't know the thing that was said in third period that everyone's laughing about. So this is going to be really hard because a lot of schools, they've accepted the free technology from the tech companies. They've got either the iPads or the Chromebooks. And as long as the kids can text on those, can customize them, they can get to porn usually, they can get around. That's terrible. We've got to get all of this stuff, at least out of K through 8. High school is going to be harder, but I really think elementary and middle school, we have to rip all the personal devices out. There are times they'll use a computer, but we can't let them sit in class with a device that can text, send text, read text. Otherwise, they just don't pay attention.
I've talked to parents who say, look, this is all well and good, but I'm working, my husband's working, or I'm a single mom. And I can't be home when my kids come home. I can't control what they're doing or not doing. I need a break too. And the iPad is a babysitter when I can't afford some. So how do we have a conversation without shaming, with recognizing that so many people are in two-parent households or in single-parent households, but everybody's working, and they rely sometimes on the phone or on the technology to help them get through.
So there should be no shame here. I wrote the book with no blame for parents, and I explain how did we let this happen? Because we thought that this stuff was amazing. Most people, if you're Gen X or older, you remember the 1990s. You remember when you first saw the internet. It was incredible. And then you got your first iPhone. Incredible. And we thought, oh, my kid's playing with my iPhone. Amazing. He's going to get smart. He's going to learn to master the technology. So if you go back to this, all happened between 2010 and 2015. In 2010, most adolescents had a flip phone. In 2015, the overwhelming majority had a smartphone with a front-facing camera and Instagram and high-speed internet. So I call that period the great rewiring of childhood, 2010 to 2015. And in that period, most of us were still techno-optimists. Most of us still thought, this technology is just going to be so amazing that maybe it's not bad if our kid is spending so much time on a device. But now we know better. Now we know that it was a mistake. So there's no shame here. We got suckered into this. We didn't know what we were doing. Now we know. It's really hard for any of us to take our kid off if we're the only one. But if we work together, if you just reach out, you're probably on a text thread with the parents of some of your kids' friends. They meet up. Just Just do it with a few other families and you can do
And
it. So you, yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. And so you're also advocating for families to get together, go into principals and say, we want to be that school. We want to be that phone free environment. We want to get rid of this because our kids are really struggling.
Exactly. Schools are the place to do. Schools are the most powerful way to change these norms. Because first of all, I can tell you, I've spoken at many schools. The teachers all hate the phones. They don't want to be the phone police. They can see that the kids are watching porn. They can't get through to the kids. The principals hate the phones. The drama is constant. They can't even see what the drama is. They all hate it. I said, well, why don't you just use phone lockers? And they say, because there are a few parents that yell and scream, that insist they must be able to communicate with their child throughout the day during math class. And the principals are afraid of that small number of parents. Well, my hope is that the large majority of parents can see what this is doing to their kids and their kids' education. And the scores are literally dropping since 2012. American kids were getting smarter and smarter, very slow but steady academic improvement over many decades till 2012. Then it turns around and our kids are getting less smart because they're on phones all day rather than listening to their teachers. So schools are the place to start. Go in a group. If you're in the PTA, if you have any influence, do it as a group. And really, not to beg, but really show how important it is that you want your child to have 6 or 7 hours every day when they don't have the phone in front of their face, when they actually have to listen to another human being and look at them in the eye.
Somebody just wrote an interesting thing that said, sadly, phones have helped during school shootings. So you might be up against some of that pushback where people are really afraid at school.
No, that's right. That is the main argument that I hear.
Oh,
and as
really?
a parent, I have two high school kids, and I can't imagine being in that situation. All I can do is say, let's listen to the experts. What do they say? And the experts say, in the event of a horrible thing, what do you want? Do you want all the kids on their phones crying and not listening to what they're supposed to do? Or do you want all the kids following directions? The teacher has a phone. The adults all have phones. Do you want your kids following the plan, or do you want your kids all calling their parents? I know it's emotionally very hard to say this, but I want to do what's going to most likely make my kids survive.
Also, what I thought was really interesting is you also talk about the kind of helicopter parents that have also kind of led to this kind of anxious generation, and that many kids who have been brought up in this time are being brought up by really anxious parents, parents who hover, parents who helicopter, parents who are like, don't let their kids kind of do anything on their own. And what role do we as parents bear for this?
So this is where I've learned so much from my friend Lenore Skenazy,
Right.
who wrote a book called Free Range Kids. The book is so good. She helped me and my wife with our parenting so much that Lenore and I founded an organization called Let Grow. If listeners will go to letgrow.org, we have all kinds of suggestions for how to give your kid back the kind of play that you had as a child. The world is much safer now than it was in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It's hard for us to believe, and we're afraid. But the thing is, we give each other the anxiety. And especially it's transmitted to mothers as though, hey, I saw your kid walking to a store with no adult, your 8-year-old child. I caught him walking to a store. What are you doing? Like that falls on the mothers, especially as though they did something wrong.
Yeah.
No, if you send your 8-year-old child out to get a quart of milk, that is a very, very good thing. You should be doing that. And so our most powerful program at Let Grow is called the Let Grow Experience. The school gives a homework assignment. All the kids, let's say third graders, go home, talk with your parents, find one thing that you can do that you've never done alone by yourself. Maybe it's walk the dog. Maybe it's go get a quart of milk. Maybe it's make dinner. Agree with your parents you're going to do it, and then do it. And then you come into school and you put it up on your tree. You put a leaf on your tree, and gradually you see you've done all these things. Well, this has absolutely transformative effects on the kids. The kids who are anxious, they're often anxious the first time they step out of the door without an adult. They are anxious, but they do it. And then they are just thrilled. They're like jumping up and down with excitement. And if you do this as a homework assignment, now all the families are supposed to do it. And now the parents can let go. And before you know it, it's normal to have 8-year-olds walking a few blocks to a store. It's normal to see a group of kids playing together on a front yard or, heaven forbid, in a park. So we have to let go of our anxieties because our anxieties as parents are major contributors to our kids anxiety disorders because they don't get the experience of overcoming challenges in the real world.
I thought this would be something interesting about the role of grandparents because there's so many grandparents who are doing caregiving, who are stepping in to help their kids, some who are raising kids entirely on their own, who raise kids in a completely different environment. What do you think the role of grandparents could be?
Oh, that's, you know what? I haven't really thought about that, but it's right, actually kind of obvious that they can have a huge role
Right.
there. Because what's happening now is, Gen Z, the oldest members of Gen Z are now 28. So
Right.
they're beginning to be children. So we're beginning to have children who never had any independence as children are now trying to raise children, and we're telling them to give their kids independence. Whereas every single grandparent, well, just about, had a free range childhood. Every single grandparent knew the excitement of meeting up with other kids, getting into a little trouble, inventing a game, running around outside. Every grandparent knows that joy.
Yeah.
So I think grandparents really can step in and really help their kids to let go and to say, look, I know it's hard, but this is what we did with, this is what we did. Well, this is what we did with, with you. And
Yeah.
anyway, so yes, grandparents really can play a huge role in breaking up the cycle of anxiety.
Yeah, several people I see here go, I just can't imagine letting my 8-year-old go out into the world alone. He's not aware of how dangerous it actually is out there, especially kids who live in cities, kids who live in areas that aren't safe. So what do you say to that, the idea of like letting an 8-year-old walk around alone?
It certainly is true that there are some parts of our country where there really is a lot of crime, there really is danger. And of course, some people live in areas where it's made for cars, there's no sidewalks. So I'm not saying this is going to work for every single person. But just to give an example, so I live in New York City. I live in Greenwich Village. I teach at New York University. Yeah. It's a little sketchier now in the last couple of years, but it was great when, in the 2010s, it was great. And it's all so much better than when I was growing up. And so because I'm friends with Lenore, I let my kids do errands in third grade when they were 8 years old. They could walk to the store, across the street. They could go to CVS a block and a half away. And you could see them grow. You could see them just like, fill out. So yes, we have to overcome our fears, but remember, crime is down so low compared to what it was in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. The world is drunk drivers. When I was growing up, my friends and I would drink and drive. Like that was a normal thing to do in the 70s. That is very rare now. There's very little drunk driving now. There's distracted driving. That's true.
Right.
So the point is just that, yes, you can point, yes, you're going to be a little afraid starting off, but just try it. Try it and you'll discover that your kid actually is much more capable than you realize.
A woman here, Monica, said this is an equity issue. Can you address that, Jonathan?
So it's an equity issue in two ways. For one is that what the research we have shows that our kids are spending about 7 to 9 hours a day on their devices, average. But kids who have a single parent, it's substantially higher. Kids who are poor, substantially higher. Black and Hispanic kids, families, higher. So yes, the white and Asian married parent, college degrees, they're on it. They're trying. Even they are having trouble. Even they are having trouble getting good norms in their household. It's hard for all of us, but it's in those more advantaged families. I think we're going to be able to see more progress in terms of putting on restrictions, and so that does raise an equity issue.
Yeah.
Because the poor kids, the single parents, and that's why phone-free schools are so crucial. Because phone-free schools is actually it works the other way. That is, phone-free schools are going to help everybody, but they're especially going to help the kids who have a single parent, the kids who are in a poor family, the kids who otherwise would spend 16 hours a day, like literally 16 hours a day on their device, because they're almost always on it. Even if they're talking to you, they're still on their device. Give everyone 6 hours a day during the school day, device free. That's going to especially help.
Jonathan, you also talk about how the effect of this has been different depending on the gender. Talk a little bit about that. So if you're the parent of a boy, of a girl, of an LGBTQIA child, how is it played out depending on your gender?
Sure. So the story for girls is very clear. And I thought at first that my book was going to be mostly about what social media is doing to girls, because that's where the data is clearest. The correlational data of time use, mental health is clearest. The experimental data is clearest. So that's, and also for girls, their mental health doesn't really change in the 2000s. And all of a sudden, right around 2013, it goes way up. And so for the girls, it is very clearly social media. It's the social comparison. It's the perfectionism. It's the eating disorders. It's, it's being contacted by strange men. It's being sextorted by other boys in their class. I mean, girls are really getting shredded, especially in middle school. 7th grade is the peak year of bullying. And we give our kids smartphones and social media in 5th or 6th grade. It's crazy. So girls are really being harmed by social media in particular. Boys, I can't show that. I can't show that it's social media that's harming the boys so much. Now, we saw those horrible stories in the Senate hearings, boys who were sextorted and then were suicidal or actually killed themselves because of the shame. So boys are getting harmed by social media too, but the data is not as clear as it is for girls. For boys, it's a different story. When they all got phones, they all got internet connections. The girls went especially for Instagram and Tumblr and Pinterest, the visual platforms. The boys went for video games, multiplayer video games, and phone-based games, and also pornography. So the boys are spending a lot of time with video games and porn. It's not making them depressed, so it doesn't show up in the mental health stats as much. What's happening to our boys? They're not making efforts in the real world. They're not doing anything that's hard. The technology for boys makes it really easy for them to get what they want. I want to play war games with my friends. I just press a button. We're connected. I don't have to actually find anyone and run around and fall down and handle arguments. Like none of that stuff. The platform takes care of all the rules, all the arguments. And then of course, porn is giving them sexual satisfaction without letting them make any progress in how do you approach a girl? How do you talk to a girl? How do you flirt? How do you seduce? They don't get any progress, any practice in this. So for boys, it's not that they're getting so depressed and anxious, although they are more. It's that they are failing to do the hard things it takes to become a man. They have to have that trial and error, that failure, that exertion. They have to run around. They have to have more physical activity, rough and tumble play compared to girls. When we crack down on recess, we give our kids very, very little recess in America. That hurts the boys even more than it hurts the girls. So there are big, big gender differences in what the technology is doing to our kids.
Several of you have asked me to hold up the book again, I guess because it comes off backwards. It's called The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. And you can get it on Amazon. You can get it at any local bookstore. We're going to have it in the Sunday paper. We're going to sell it. We're going to replay this conversation. And I think what Jonathan is really telling us is that the evidence is there. It's there for us as parents. It's a call to grandparents, which I think is exciting. Or I'm making it a call to grandparents because we remember when there was no phone or there was no technology and we had board games or you got, in the dirt. But what, Jonathan, is your biggest fear if we don't heed your warning?
Well, the levels of anxiety and depression are so high that it is now normal. If you're an American girl, it's just a normal thing that you're thinking about suicide. A third of them are thinking about suicide.
Wow.
30 to 40% have either anxiety disorders or depression. It's a normal thing now. It's not a majority yet, but if we keep going, it will be a majority. It will be the majority of our girls will be suicidal, and the majority of our boys will be sort of just video game players who don't really get life experience. So we have to turn it around. People tell me that the main opposition I face is resignation. People tell me, the train's left the station. What are you going to do? It's too late. Like, really? If the train had left the station full of our kids and it's going somewhere and we know the track is out, we know it's going to plunge off a bridge, we know they're all going to die, I think we should try to call it back. What do you think? So we don't have a choice here. We have to know if someone can come up with an alternative hypothesis, and nobody has. If someone can come up with an alternative explanation for why this happened right around 2012, 2013, in so many countries, exactly the same in Australia, New Zealand, UK, Canada, the Nordic countries. So that's not because of anything in America. This is a global, well, it's not every country, but it's in the freest, most developed countries where kids had a lot of freedom. Those kids get washed out to sea as soon as they move their lives onto social media platforms. So
you're saying that anybody who feels that the train has left the station, there are too many phones, we can't pull it back, you're saying join forces with other parents, join forces in your community. You can pull it back. You can change this loneliness epidemic, the suicide, the depression, the anxiety in yourself and your children, right? It's really across generational.
Yep, that's right. And that's really the hopeful message. Yes, it feels like you can't call the train back if you're one person, and that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But if we act together, we actually can call it back. Now, it's going to be harder for the older kids who are already well through it, and there's a lot they can do. I have students in my class here at NYU. They make amazing progress just by getting a handle on their phone use, reducing notifications, taking social media off their phone. So don't give up no matter how old your kids are. But if your kids are in elementary or middle school, there's so much that you can do to give them a better trajectory through adolescence. We have to especially protect early puberty, middle school, elementary and middle school. Got to protect that. That's where the maximum damage seems to be done, especially for girls.
But you have to be willing. I remember the worst fight I ever had with my oldest son was over the phone. And he would, oh, it was, I won't go into it, but we haven't had a fight about it since. But I have a very strict rule, at the table when you come in, phones are gone. And I find that people are relieved, really relieved when they go to a party and people say no phones. People are like, oh, thank God. As long as everybody doesn't have the phone, then it's a relief. But if there's one or two outliers, then people are like, oh, what am I missing? But I think this kind of uniformity, there's that great Margaret Mead quote that said, never doubt that a small group of people have changed the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has.
Exactly. That's right. And I would just end, I soon come to the end, I can't tell from the clock, but I would end with a really hopeful note. A reason why I think we're going to win, we're going to succeed, is that the young people themselves see the problem. They are not in denial. Gen Z sees the problems. They know what the phones are doing to them. You say, well, why don't you quit? And they always say the same thing. I can't because everyone else is on. But if we all do it together, at least to roll it back for the younger kids and to put limits on for the high school kids, if we act together with our children, with Gen Z, they want to be liberated, as you say. They actually, if you show them like a summer camp with no phones or phones, like they realize it's so much better if we're all off. So that's why I think we're actually going to succeed within a year or two. We're going to really change what childhood feels like, not just in America, but around the world.
Well, we'll keep in touch with you to see how the progress is going. We'll post the organization you started. It's called Let's Grow.
Letgrow.org.
Let Grow. We'll also post that, letgrow.org. Remember, your power is in your community. The more people that think the way you do and want to put their children's health and their mental health and yours as well. I find when I put my phone away, I can think, I can walk, I'm clearer, and I can, figure out what do I want to do? What do I want to think? It brings up all kinds of things. If my face is, somebody just listed your organization there, but so it helps parents, it helps grandparents, it helps everybody. And so I want to thank you so much, Jonathan, for this work. So much work goes into a book like this. Your research is incredible. And I want to thank you for initiating this conversation. I've talked to some people who have kids in boarding school back each, and they've actually had phone-free schools for the last year. And they had one for an all-boys school and said it was dramatic what the result was. Okay, I just said thank you for making time. Good luck with the book, and we'll keep this conversation going.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thanks for all your work on mental health, and thanks for letting me talk to your friends and audience.
Thank you.